So that was all about the producers. Now the consumers, which includes us. What they do is they eat other organisms. So they are not using energy from the sun, but instead have to consume other organisms to get that energy. You're probably familiar with this concept, but you have herbivores, so those that are, eating nuts, fruits, vegetables, just anything that is a producer. So essentially, they're just eating producers. Then you have carnivores, which is on the other extreme. They're only eating other organisms. And then you have the mix, the omnivores, such as bears, kind of the classic example, as well as humans. Our teeth are adapted for both meat eating as well as eating fibrous plant tissue. But again, we're getting our energy from plants. Even carnivores. Keep in mind that even though this wolf is eating a deer, that deer ate a plant, and that plant got energy from the sun. So really everything goes back to the sun. Even if that's not what you're eating directly, all of our energy came from the sun, came from those plants. Now, we as consumers don't undergo photosynthesis. Instead, we do something else. And it relates back to that glucose. So I have a good analogy for you. So we have a parking meter. And I might ask someone, like, hey, you got $1? Like a dollar bill? Because I could use a dollar bill in order to, fuel this machine. But that dollar bill is not going to help me. I need quarters. It's the same thing with glucose. So imagine I could use sunlight to fuel this parking meter. Well, that's not going to work. But the plant can use that sunlight. And when the plant uses that sunlight, it creates glucose. And glucose is like that dollar bill. It makes this energy source. The plant is using it to grow taller, to get more roots, to get more leaves. And that's awesome. But we as consumers, we eat the plant and we get this glucose, but can't quite use it. Does not help us with our parking meter. So what we need to do is we need to convert this glucose into something else. We need to convert it into quarters. It's still energy, but this is a type of energy we can actually use. You and me and bears and fish and dolphins and whatever, they cannot use glucose directly. We have to do something else to get a usable form of energy. Energy that can let us run, energy that's making me talk. So what do? And that's what we're going to explore. So what we do is a process called cellular respiration. So what happens is our body eats that glucose from the plant, or maybe eats that glucose from another organism, and we break it down into ATP. If you're really interested in what ATP stands for, you don't need to know this, but some of you just have a budding curiosity. It's adenosine triphosphate. This is a really good Jeopardy question, though, so it's not useless information. It's actually a modified molecule of DNA. So adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, is how we use energy. When you breathe, your lungs got bigger, your diaphragm lifted up. It was ATP that moved all those muscles. When you are kickboxing or whatever, you're using ATP to move those muscles. When you're thinking, it's ATP moving those neurons around and making connections. So ATP is the actual energy our body uses. For plants, it's also ATP, but we'll talk about that more in a second. So here's photosynthesis again. Carbon dioxide, water, and light makes oxygen and glucose. Cellular respiration is flipped. What it is oxygen and glucose. So think of this such as food. So oxygen and food equals carbon dioxide, H2O, and energy. In this case, our energy is ATP. So you and me, and bears, and fish, and dolphins, and all sorts of organisms, they breathe in oxygen. If we had no oxygen, We couldn't use cellular respiration, we couldn't get ATP, we couldn't live. If you don't eat, you don't get glucose, you can't do cellular respiration, you can't make ATP, you don't live. So two prerequisites, we need water, we need food. And what does it make? It makes carbon dioxide, so when you exhale, it's a lot of carbon dioxide that you're exhaling. Your body broke down that glucose and now it's releasing carbon dioxide in your lungs. You also create water. This isn't a whole bunch of water, but enough. You will pee it out. Not much, but a little bit. And ATP, the small little molecule that controls and really makes everything in your body work. Now, I mentioned earlier, plants also use ATP. All living organisms use ATP. All living organisms. Plants, although, yeah, they get their energy from the sun to make that glucose, they too undergo cellular respiration. Plants have to break down glucose to make ATP too. ATP is used to take in water from the soil. It's used to open and close those mouths to let carbon dioxide and oxygen in and out. It's used to literally move the plant towards the sun. So plants need ATP energy too. Plants can't use glucose. So plants photosynthesize and do cellular respiration. But we as consumers, we only do cellular respiration. We cannot photosynthesize. The last group of organisms are the detritivores, or decomposers. I'll probably be using the word decomposers the most, but you may see some activities or videos that refer to detritivores. They're more or less the same. It has to do with how they break down things, but for the purpose of this course, they're the same thing. These are organisms that eat and break down dead organisms. Exclusively. They don't hunt ever. They don't go and forage things. They take advantage of the dead. And that sounds kind of gruesome, but that's what they're doing. And it's actually really good for the environment because it recycles nutrients. A lot of them are bacteria. So these green things, these are all bacteria. Bacteria are our main decomposers. Different types of mushrooms and fungi are decomposers. But even some animals, so here we have worms and vultures that are taking advantage of dead nutrients. Now, just because you eat something dead, for example, we eat cows, but, and they're dead when we eat them, but we do hunt them, so to speak. We're not scavenging. We're not walking around waiting for a cow to die before we start eating them. So just keep that distinction in mind. Yes, you're eating dead things, but we are killing them, so to speak, when we consume them. So again, our three major ecosystem roles are producers. They get their energy from the sun by doing photosynthesis. We have our consumers, which are getting their energy from glucose. They get that glucose by either eating other plants or animals. Plants also undergo cellular respiration along with animals. Both of us need ATP. And then finally, we have our decomposers. Decomposers are breaking down dead things. I should mention, decomposers also undergo cellular respiration. They're just getting their glucose from something that's already died.